Hi, everyone. I just want to take a few minutes to review exempt or non-exempt for your mini project that's due this week on the 12th. Now, a lot of you are doing great work. You're handing in your work early. That's fantastic. But I am seeing a lot of incorrect answers. And so what I'd like for you to do is please reread the FLSA fact sheet and double check your answers. My goal here is to not necessarily, try to trick you or only have some of my students get, 100% on this. I think it's really important, especially when it comes to exempt and non-exempt, for everyone to get 100% on this assignment. Why? Because I can guarantee if you're an HR professional, one of the things that you will absolutely need to know how to do is exempt or non-exempt, how to classify your employees. Because I can guarantee if you classify wrong, you can find yourself in some hot water. A lot of lawsuits come about when businesses do not classify their employees correctly. So let me go ahead and give you a little bit of a history lesson. Prior to the 1930s, employees in this country were taken advantage of, severely advantage of. We did not have labor laws in effect. And so businesses took complete advantage of employees. They sometimes literally worked them to death. I'm not being um, facetious here or over exaggerating that. Employees or employers absolutely took advantage of employees. And so Congress in the 1930s stepped in and said, you know what? We have a lot of businesses that are just being really unfair to employees. So let's go ahead and do something about that. And so FLSA is one of those laws that came about. Now, FLSA has a lot of different areas that it covers. Minimum age to work. There's child protection under that. There's the federal minimum wage as well at 725. It didn't start off at 725. I think I want to say it was like a 25 cents or 38 cents, something like that, way back when. But now it's at 725. And so it does encompass a lot of different laws. But the law we're going to focus on here is classifying employees, exempt or non-exempt. So what I like to do is I like to think of, let me go ahead and define what those terms are. Exempt means that an employee is exempt from overtime, meaning they don't get overtime. So they're a salary. So exempt equals salary. Non-exempt equals hourly. Really simple, right? So exempt equals salary. Non-exempt, they're not exempt from overtime. They get overtime. They're paid hourly. And so if you have a job or had a job before, you were either getting paid a salary or an hourly based on laws. Businesses can't just pay their employees what they want. And they can't even decide, who gets a salary and who gets an hourly wage, because this law tells employers how to do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this law, make sure we're all on the same page. So one of the things that I want you to remember is that a good rule of thumb is assume that every position is an hourly position, because we want to pay people fairly and we want to pay them for overtime unless they qualify for an exemption. And I will tell you that there are very few positions that actually qualify for the exemption, meaning there are very few positions that can actually qualify to be a salaried position. Now, on your assignment, it's about half and half. I don't know if it's half and half. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I know there's more than one that is exempt on there. There's a couple of them, I believe. I don't have it in front of me, but in the real world, believe it or not, very few positions qualify for a salary. Let's go ahead and take a look at those. You can call a position a manager. I can slap any title I want on any position, and just because I call it a manager doesn't necessarily mean they get to be paid like a manager. I hope that makes sense. It all comes down to the job duties and the job description that will qualify an individual for salary. So what I like for you to do is assume everyone's hourly unless they qualify. So let's go ahead and take a look at these qualifications. So when you look up at the fact sheet, the FLSA fact sheet, you will see it talks a little bit about when it's, what overtime is and all that. Again, assume every position is hourly unless they're an executive, they're administrative, they're professional, they're computer, they're outside sales, or that they're a highly compensated. Now, just because you have the title manager, you could be a business manager, an account manager, a production manager, operations manager, just because they have that title doesn't mean they actually qualify. So let's go ahead and take a look at what qualifies a certain position. And so when you look at your mini project, don't necessarily look at the title, look at that job description. So in order for someone to qualify, you're going to go right down the list. You're going to see, okay, so executive exemption. Who gets that exemption? Let's see. So employee has to be paid at least $684 a week, which turns out to be 35,584. No, 35,568, excuse me. 35,568 annually. So you first have to make at least that. But just because you make that doesn't necessarily mean that you get to be paid a salary. Take nurses, for instance. Nurses do very well. They can make 60, 70, $80,000, even more, depending on their specialty. They make a lot of money. However, just because they make 60, 70, 80,000 a year doesn't necessarily mean that you get to pay them a salary. In fact, nurses are paid hourly based on their job description. And so they have overtime. I know I have a lot of friends that are nurses, and they're always looking for that overtime because that's when they make the real the real good money, right? So just because you get paid well doesn't necessarily mean you get to be paid a salary. Um, the opposite is true too. With nurses, you can have a nurse that is maybe a nurse manager. And so depending on that job description, that might exempt them from overtime. So typically a nurse manager or someone in a administrative role at a hospital, for instance, they don't get paid hourly because of their job description. It actually falls under this executive exemption. So let's go ahead and take a look. So you have to get paid $684 a week. And then the person also has to be responsible for managing a department or the enterprise, right? They have to be some sort of supervisor. They have to have at least, a couple of different full-time employees report to them. They're responsible for hiring and firing, promotion, anything like that. So that's the first type of exemption. The second type is administrative. So when I think of an executive exemption, I think of the higher level management at a company. You have your CEOs, your directors, your VPs, even managers fall under that. They all can qualify because of their job responsibilities. Now, I also know that there are certain roles within organizations that just because they don't have people report to them directly, they still might have an exemption to overtime based on what they do. I was a corporate compliance manager, for instance. I had the title manager in my, or the word manager in my title, but that didn't necessarily mean I should be paid a salary. Now, part of my job description actually fell under administrative exemption. So I was paid a salary, but I had to qualify for that. So I had to be paid at least $684 a week. My primary responsibility had to be non-manual work related to management or other business operations. And so while I did not have employees that reported directly to me, I did get to use independent judgment. I made discretion. I made decisions in a matter of significance. And so that job fell under administrative. Even though I had the word manager in it, it didn't fall under executive, it fell under administrative. But then I was also a training manager at that same company, and I actually had people report to me. So then that position fell under executive. So it all depends on the job description. So professional exemptions, those are for your teachers, and then computer employees as well. So they have to qualify based on their $684 or $27.63 an hour. And basically any computer, most of your computer employees now are making well above that. So that's no problem for them to qualify for that because they know that a computer employee does not have typically manual labor. They sit at their desk, right? And they're coding away or they're developing or whatever it is that they're doing at their jobs. But an IT professional does qualify for an exemption. And they're also saying that an outside sales position can qualify, and that's someone who goes out making sales calls out on the road because they probably get paid or they're compensated not only a salary, but typically with commission as well. And then anyone making over $107,432 can automatically get paid a salary. They said, well, that's such a high pay that it doesn't matter what the job is, you can go ahead and pay them a salary. Let's go ahead and take a look at blue collar workers. So blue collar workers do not meet the exemption, meaning any blue collar worker, anyone who has repetitive motions, has a physical skill, regardless, they have to be paid an hourly wage. And that's where nurses actually fall under, because even though a nursing position might not be considered blue collar, so to speak, they are actually on their feet a lot and there's a physical skill involved. And so they fall under this as well. And so any electricians, mechanics, plumbers, craftspeople, construction workers, laborers, they all fall under this blue collar worker where they have to be paid overtime. It doesn't matter how much you pay them. All right. And then police and fire as well, they get paid hourly. So just things to think about. I want you to again go back, look at the job description that's on the mini project, and don't necessarily look at their job title, but look at what it is that they're supposed to do. And if they are not on here, if you can't find them under here, then they're an hourly position. It's really simple. But again, double check your answers, because I am seeing some that are not correct. And I want to make sure that you fully understand how to classify employees correctly. All right. If you have questions, reach out. Thanks so much.